Hello, good people. I am the Last Airblender, and welcome to a tutorial about how to make rooms in Blender. But not just any rooms, low poly rooms that you can use for your mobile game, your normal game, or just about any game that requires low poly rooms, such as these. You see, this room I made is made simply out of planes, and I will, in this tutorial, show you about how to create this room using planes, how to import them into Unity, how to position them correctly in order to make as many rooms as your heart desires. And you see, I am walking around these rooms completely collidable and such. Let's get started. Now I'm just opening my test project I have in Unity and opening my test scene. So yes, start a new project in scene if you haven't already, and start a new scene in Blender if you haven't already. And now we will simply add a plane here. We can keep it at this default size, but the reason we are importing a plane from Blender into Unity3D is because the planes in Unity3D, as you can see, are very high poly. I do not know why they do this. It is probably because Unity has cloth physics support, and these very high poly planes that Unity comes set up with are designed to work with cloth physics. Now these planes are much too high poly for our purposes, so we shall instead import a plane from Blender. And yes, these planes are only one-sided, unless you set them up to be two-sided, but that is a subject for a different tutorial. We will only be needing one side on our planes today. Now, once you have your plane all added and set up, that is pretty much all you need to do. Now, make sure your plane is selected. We will export to an FBX format. If you have not seen my tutorial about how to export models from Blender to Unity3D, that was 2 videos ago. Go back and look at that, and I will just name this plane. I will find where I created my tutorial project, and I will save it in the assets folder. Now you see, once I saved it in the assets folder, it does appear in the assets folder, and the like I said in my exporting to Unity video, the small icon here does look like the model is facing upright, even though when you drag it in, it is in fact not upright. But there are some things we will need to do in order to set up creating low poly rooms in Unity3D. The first thing we will need to do is select our plane, go to the inspector window, and set our scale factor to 100. This is to make the scale of the plane more similar to all of the other objects in the scene. Next, we will need to check Generate Colliders, so that anything you create, your player or whatever, will in fact collide with the plane, but only on the visible side. And then you just hit Apply, and drag in our plane into the scene. Now, in order to set up our Unity scene so that we can create our low poly rooms, we first need to move the plane over to 0, 0, 0, and that is the center of the Unity scene. So we go into our inspector, go to Position, and we set each value to 0. And you will now see our plane is far away from the viewport. We can just double-click the plane in the hierarchy in order to have our view teleported over to it. Now, we go to Edit, Snap Settings, and if your move X, move Y, and move Z are a value that is not 1, we set it to 1. This is so that when we hold Control and we drag around our plane, the snapping will align to the grid in Unity3D. This is the technique that must be used to create your walls, floors, and ceilings for your low-poly room in Unity3D. Let me demonstrate. You simply hold Control and D, and that will duplicate your low-poly plane. And you can simply hold Control to drag it around. And you repeat this process to create as large a floor as you want. Now, in order to create walls the same way, you duplicate the plane, but now, instead of simply dragging it around, we use the Rotate tool at the top left of the screen, and make sure you're holding Control and rotate the plane until it's standing up at a 90-degree angle. And now, since it looks like a wall now, we can drag the plane as normal, just as we did for the floors. And now we can simply duplicate these wall planes how we like. We can also rotate these already made wall planes in order to create wall planes that face different directions. Keep in mind that these wall planes you create and the floor planes will only be visible from one side, as you can see. Now, in order to create ceilings for your low-poly room, we must select our plane we used as the floor. We will duplicate that, and then we will simply rotate this plane 180 degrees so that it is, instead of facing upward, facing downward. You will know it's facing the right way when it is not visible from the top any longer. And you simply position it as you did for the floors, but instead on the ceiling. And hopefully the information provided to you will allow you to create low-poly rooms in Unity3D.